All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. This is the MetroCommon 2050 Mini Grants webinar. I'm excited to be here. My name is Carolina Prieto. I'm the Interim Community Engagement Manager here at MAPC, and I'm here with my colleague, Sasha Perotti. She's our event planner and is also working here at MAPC and working strongly with the MetroCommon team here. So we'll just go ahead and get started. I'm going to go through the presentation, and then we are recording the presentation, so this will be available to folks online after the webinar. And we do have the text chat available, so as folks are trickling in, if people have questions, anything comes up, feel free to ask questions on the chat. You are muted. And we'll be sure to answer questions at the end. So to start, so we are the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We serve 101 cities and towns. We're a quasi-governmental agency here in Massachusetts. We are Greater Boston's regional planning agency. We work with a lot of municipalities, cities, and towns on different planning projects, anything from economic development to arts and culture to environment, et cetera. And, you know, we're excited to be able to provide a mini grant opportunity for people to engage with us in our MetroCommon 2050 work. So what is MetroCommon 2050? It is a plan for those who will live, work, and play here to imagine and create a future together. So it's an exciting moment for the agency. We have a regional planning process once every 10 years, and so it's a really great opportunity for people to come together and think about regional solutions to local problems, and this is one of the ways that we're able to do that. So what will MetroCommon 2050 aim to achieve after its completion? So really this guiding document is going to be, or this digital presence, digital hub will be a way for us to support technical assistance for future planning processes. It's going to collect best practices around the region, around regional planning. It's going to help provide policy guidance and recommendations for the future. And it's really going to be a searchable tool that will be online and provide data for all the residents here in Massachusetts, in our region, that are able to support them in their planning and organizing practices. So in terms of the overview of the mini grants, we're excited because the mini grants is really a part of the overall planning process of engagement for MetroCommon 2050. So it's a process that is going to be included around partnerships. We've been doing a lot of pop-ups in the region, so going to different festivals, events, different meetings, presenting on MetroCommon and sharing some of the visioning and process goals that we have so far. We've been doing workshops in the community in different areas, focus areas, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we've been doing a lot of events as well. So we've been having sit-down conversations with breakfasts and lunches with cities and towns and planning partners. But also we've been doing some digital engagement as well, so thinking about ways that we can use our internal digital hub that's actually made in-house to be able to share our information as relevant information is coming out about research, action areas, and the work that's going to be guiding future processes for this regional plan. Our grants are $5,000 to $15,000 per grantee organization or group or individual, and we're totaling $100,000 in the next about 2 years to be able to provide technical assistance for supporting the community engagement work. We do have an application. It is required, and it is online at our website, metrocommon.mhc.org, and we do ask that some applicants may be asked to come in for an interview, so I want to put that up front. In terms of requirements for grantees, grantees will be asked to check in person, over the phone, with MAPC staff at the beginning, middle, and end of the grant period. So that could be done in different ways depending on where they are in the region and kind of how we can best coordinate. We're happy to come out to you as well. And you know, grantees will be also asked to submit photos, video, and/or video, as well as other documentation of the engagement completed within the grant. So we do have kind of a data login, a spreadsheet that we'll be sending out to grantees where folks can kind of record some of the feedback that folks are hearing from the engagement practices so that we can, in turn, take that information and analyze it on our end so we can include it within the planning process. Grantees will also sign an agreement that includes a scope of work and a budget with MAPC. And I just want to point out that we are available to support folks in this process and help people who may not be used to developing a scope of work or developing a budget template to work with us so you can kind of walk through that process. I will be giving some examples about what some of those budgets and projects can look like in this presentation, but if there are follow-up needs, we're happy to do that with you. And then in terms of the distribution of grant funds, we understand that sometimes project work needs to have some upfront costs covered in order for it to be developed. So we want to make sure that people understand that we understand that, and that, you know, per the contract and per the agreement with the individual or group, that we are willing to work that with you to make sure that you can have the most successful project possible. So in terms of timeline, we are accepting the grants applications on a rolling basis. However, I do want to point out that we have some tentative follow-up deadlines. We are going to be organizing with our Community Engagement Advisory Committee for MetroCommon to review the grants, and that's a group of folks from all over the region who cover a vast variety of topical areas and have expertise in different areas. And a subset of them will be helping to review all the grant applications as well as some of our staff internally. And so we'll be gathering on certain dates within the next few months to be able to review those grants. So you can see up here, our first grant review is going to be September 16th. So if you are in the process of putting this grant application together, just know that that's when we're going to be sitting down and taking the first review. And you can see the subsequent dates here after that. So just to be clear about who is eligible for the grant, we do want to point out that we really want to work with new partners and organizations. Oftentimes we see that we're solely working with or limited in the way that we're working with folks, and so we want to encourage people to really think outside the box and be creative in how they work with us. So we're pointing out the folks that can, you know, have individuals who have a history of working in the community, organizers, nonprofits, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, youth leaders, artists, others individuals that may not have not listed here. We encourage you to apply. The folks that are ineligible are municipalities, folks who are serving, who would have a project that are outside of the region. So, you know, if you're going to be serving somebody outside the 101 cities and towns that we do serve, and then state agencies. Great. So who, what, and where? Let's talk about that, and what can be the focus of the grant. So in terms of the project, we are looking to serve the following populations and focus areas with this grant. So you can see here, population focus, we're really looking for those who have typically been marginalized or taken out of planning processes and have historically not been included. So really delineating that piece. In terms of topical focus, you can see here it's all of the areas that we cover here in the agency, and some areas that we don't have expertise in. So outside of MAPC, we'd love to see some of that, including more of these topical areas as well. And then we also have a geographic focus that you can see here. And this geographic focus, based on an equity analysis that we did in our region, and thinking about which communities most need our support right now for engagement in this planning process. So right now, to give a little bit of background, we're in phase 2 of the planning process. Phase 1 was really focusing in on developing a vision for MetroCommon, as well as thinking about goals and developing strategies, developing the goals for the plan. So you can see here, these are the current goals that we have for MetroCommon, and this was really a combination of all the things that I had already mentioned. So looking at some of the in-person events that we did with municipalities, we also looked at local plans from municipalities. We also had a survey that we sent out where we collected information about potential goals and feedback on that, and then as well as some of the other digital engagement and pop-up events and workshops that we did. On our website, you can see not only these goals, but a description of what they mean, how an expression of perhaps some actions in which we can start to think about solutions for them. And then that will be kind of part of the starting point of this current phase, where we're going to be working on opportunities and challenges in the region related to these goals and some of the research that we're going to be putting out through our action areas. So what are we looking for in a project? We really want to make sure that our projects are connected to a regional issue and a need for regional solution. So we really want to, coupled with, I will say, an understanding of what is happening at a local level and what are people experiencing in your community or communities that you serve day to day. So we want to make sure that there's a local connection, but also there's a regional connection to that as well. We want to make sure that it aligns with the appropriate timeline of MetroCommon, and I kind of explained a little bit the phase that we're in. I'll show a chart about that as well. But, you know, as of right now, we're in the looking at challenges and opportunities in the region and, you know, defining that piece. So we want to make sure that if you are going to be within the timeline of phase 2, that your project aligns with that content. Having an opportunity to collect qualitative and or quantitative information. So we want to make sure that we're able to collect, you know, stories, ideas, information in ideally both ways. We realize that that can't always happen, but we want to make sure that you're clear in your application, what it is that you're going to be collecting, and what type of information that is, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. We do want people to think about an opportunity for long-term engagement based on your project. So if you are starting a project that's a one-day project, how can, you know, future work with MetroCommon and MMPC kind of build upon that engagement over time and perhaps look at different phase. So if you're in phase 2, for example, and you're looking at challenges and opportunities, how can that information and that gathering be sustained over time in different phases, or what can be a subsequent event or activity that you can do to do that. We definitely want to have new engagement methods, and we want them to be creative and think outside the box. So if you have something that is perhaps not something traditional. We want to make sure that we create space for that in this planning process. So we welcome those ideas. And then we also want to make sure that this project is able to fit within your existing work. We understand that everyone here is extremely busy. We're all trying to do as much as we can, and we want to make sure that this project builds upon the existing work that you're currently doing and is able to support you and your organization, agency, individuals, community in the work looking forward. We will provide kind of the data and content guidance per phase, so I just want to make sure that people feel at ease that that's something that we'll support you with and make sure that you have clarity on before you start developing the content of your project. So like I mentioned before, this is the current engagement timeline for the work. So like I mentioned earlier, we are in the challenges and opportunities phase up until January, and so we want to think about what are the challenges, what are the ways that communities are coming together and looking at opportunities that we're facing. And then phase 3 is looking at policies and best practices. So helping us to identify and discuss policy, actions, and best practices that will help us reach our goals. Phase 4 is going to be what's called scenario planning. So this is a really fun phase where we think about exploring future trends and forces that will help us figure out solutions for the future, and it could be challenges that we really need to be ready to address. And so thinking about visualizing that and connecting it to solutions. The 5th phase is going to be looking at recommendations and trade-offs. So we're going to look at, based on all of the suggestions that we're hearing about forces, future trends, but also just policy interventions that we could possibly supply. How could we think about recommendations, and what are the trade-offs that we need to do in order to make this practice and process sustainable and make sure that the plan is able to be implemented. So for phase 2, if folks are interested in that, I just want to kind of give a snapshot of some of the questions that we'd like people to ask. And that is, here are some of the ones that we want. So what are some of the major challenges you feel in your community? What are the barriers? What barriers do you see standing in the way of improvement in your community? What unique opportunities do you see available to improve your community? And what solutions do you see that should be implemented? And thinking about, again, how do you think these solutions will help the region as a whole? So these are some guiding questions that you can utilize to help shape your application. So I now want to go into some examples, potential examples of what a project can be that we would fund. I want to be clear that these are all hypothetical examples and are not real life, but can be ways for you to think about how you want to shape your current work and relate it to MetroCommon. So this first example is a transportation and housing workshop series. The geographic location is Boston. The population that you're trying to serve is low-income residents, and the topical focus is housing and transportation, two of the most important trending topics right now. And then thinking about the regional connection, answering, bringing communication and information about housing trends in the region and commuting times in the region, and how that relates to you on a local level in Boston or in that community. So that regional connection is really important, because when we think about a workshop series, you might have a participant talk about, trying to get the bus on time and being able to get to work and, in their local community, but thinking about the housing trends and commuting times overall in the region might help to contextualize that conversation. You know, this workshop series can meet happen 5 times, and then over 5 months. And then maybe you are thinking about partners, so you want to bring in a community development corporation who has access and works with a lot of local residents in the neighborhood, perhaps the local YMCA, which you know has a lot of after-school programs, and a lot of young parents that can really benefit from a conversation around transportation and some of the housing trends you're seeing in the neighborhood, as well as schools. And you know, perhaps you want to bring in not just the parents, but the leadership at the schools and the staff that are seeing students every day and are able to talk about what they see as challenges and barriers in terms of the housing and transportation and its connection to education and the success rate that they're seeing in their schools. So if we see a potential budget or hypothetical budget of $1,500 per workshop, you would have this kind of series be $7,500. And then lastly, on the left, you can see like what would be an engagement activity that you could bring into this conversation. One activity would be to ask participants to make a vision for an ideal future in the community, and then from there, having sparked that conversation, have people talk about their challenges and experiences, but also showcasing the housing trends and commuting times or transportation information and data that we can provide for you. The second example is a video project and screening. So this hypothetical example has a geographic focus of Salem, Massachusetts, and the focus is on low to moderate income renters. So for the focus of this project, you could think about housing affordability and strategies to meet housing needs and ways in which people are having to overcome a lot of barriers. And you can see the engagement activity as developing a video and holding a screening about it to discuss the process and the content, and perhaps having a social media campaign where you think about housing affordability and you create graphics or some type of video to be able to showcase some of the information that you've collected in your video project. The timeline, 4 months. This already passed. This is actually a project that was done a little bit differently, but there is a video out there for Homes for Salem if anyone's interested. And maybe you're partnering with the city, maybe you have additional partners, a housing authority or a nonprofit partner, or maybe it's just a community leader that is really well connected to other residents that you want to connect with. The budget being $7,500 to $15,000. So the next hypothetical example is a digital engagement opportunity, so perhaps a podcast. And maybe you want to select 8 priority areas in the region and have youth develop a podcast series where they interview other youth in the area and think about workforce development and economic development. So how youth are able to obtain jobs, what are the barriers to obtaining a job, and how they see their future careers kind of lining up to that. Thinking about the regional connection, maybe describing some economic drivers of workforce development in the region and some of the barriers that you see. So again, just to reiterate, we can help kind of figure out the connection between that. As you have some ideas, we can work with you to refine that as much as possible. So the engagement activity being 8 podcast episodes suitable for posting on our website, being downloaded, and, discussing, again, the barriers of succeeding and reaching their goals. And in terms of a timeline, maybe a 4-month timeline, and thinking about nonprofits in your community and areas that you can interview with and partner with in order to access different types of young people that can give different perspectives on the region. With a budget of $4,500. The last example we want to give is about perhaps a community forum that you want to perhaps host. So this could be an engagement activity where there are interactive stations to discuss near roadway air pollution and maybe a call to action to work with community partners on making different changes. Information about the local and state policies and what is being done about it in the community can also be shared, and the geographic focus being in Randolph and working with the immigrant community, having interpretation, translation available for the event and quoted in your budget. So again, the topical focus being health and community planning, maybe conversations around community health improvement plan and MetroCommon 2050, and thinking about how near roadway air pollution is connected to the region overall and the trends we're seeing in air pollution and issues that we're seeing in the region, across the region. Maybe it takes 6 months to plan, and partnerships can include nonprofits in the area, healthcare institutions, even health programs, and those doing direct service work in the community might be good partners to think about for this type of project. And the budget being a little over $12,000. So before kind of moving on to next steps, I just want to reiterate that these are suggestions for potential projects, and we're happy to talk to people about their individual kind of line item and their ideas of kind of really detailing out the work. So just want to point that out. In terms of next steps, so like I mentioned, we're going to be reviewing the work with, or the applications with the committee. Do have applications already been submitted, so I just want to let people know that. And our response will be typically around 2 weeks after that date in order to give people a response for that in terms of the rolling eligibility. Here is my information, and feel free to, after filling out the form online, can email me any questions or attachments, and happy to answer any questions if there are any. I'm going to unmute people. Oh, Karen?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much. This has been very, very helpful. I just started working with the Harvard Teachers Public a month ago. And
oh, excellent.
Yes, and they are very interested in pursuing this particular grant. The information you've given me is enormously helpful. I really haven't had the chance to talk to them about specific activities, given the fact that they're busy with their, engagement, shall we say. So I don't know if it's possible. Is it possible for you to send me this presentation that I could share with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to can send it to folks here and also be able to post it on the website. So if there's other items that people need, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, that would be fabulous, because after that, I'm sure we'll have a million questions. We all have a million ideas, as I'm sure you all always do. But we would have to hone them down and make them, realistic. Yeah. I love the idea. It's fabulous. The timeline's great. Can you tell me a little about some of the pop-up events that you've had?
Sure. So I'm just going to mute you again just so that there's not a reverb on the call.
I can't hear you now.
Various things. Yes, got it.
Okay.
1 second. We're just figuring out so there's not a reverb here.
I think if you click on her name.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Sasha. So to answer your question about pop-ups and what we've done so far, so we've gone to so we were at the Boston Housing Authority Unity Day event, so we did an all-day event where we had a magnet activity. We had people talk about their vision and what they'd like to see in the future. We had some specific questions about challenges and what they see as being potential solutions. We had presentations, so we attended some board meetings where we presented for like an hour to a board to just talk about, or even a coalition, to talk about what the MetroCommon plan was, but really can have an opportunity to do more of a interactive back and forth with them about their feedback on some of the goals at the time that we were drafting and what was useful and what wasn't useful and what are some considerations we need to have. We also attended some conferences where we presented there, and that had more of, I would say, a planning focus or a planner audience focus, so that'd be a little bit different than this. But in terms of the workshops, I would say we did one with Madison Park Development Corporation, which was really a great partnership, and it was able to really bring together different residents to talk about the housing and transportation issues. So that was really great. And then in terms of questions, so in terms of, I see William here, you asked us to speak a little bit about the suggested length of projects in terms of timing. So I would say, it varies on what type of projects you want to do. So it's a little bit hard to, answer, but is there a particular kind of project you're thinking about? And I will unmute you so you can, I think you are muted, William. Is there a question?
Yes, we're interested in conducting a full community survey, quantitative and qualitative, and a strategic plan for a particular neighborhood of Boston that could then be replicated elsewhere.
William, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. We are looking at quantitative and qualitative analysis of a particular Boston neighborhood, setting out a strategic plan for implementation to other neighborhoods, underserved neighborhoods around Boston.
Okay. And so particularly like how long, so more like a research project, is that what you mean?
A research project with a strong strategic action plan attached to it, probably a 6 to 9 month project.
Okay. I think, is your question like, would that be a project that we would fund? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Would that fall within the time frame that works within this foundation?
Yes, yes. So if you look at our timeline, and I can try to go back on it. Let's see. So we're going to be, extending this into 2021. So you would have, I would say, depending on what your topic is, a good amount of time to figure out what the plan was and be able to implement. I think the other piece that's important for you particularly is to think about what would be the analysis time that you would need for that project, and to be able to send that back out to us if it's more of, if you're looking at both and thinking about, how you can actually report that out. So I would think about that timing as well, not just the development of it.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. See if there are any other questions. And it sounds like there's maybe a couple people who are having some sound issues, so I just want to make sure if people still have questions, they're able to put it in the chat for us, and so we can answer it. Yes. So just a reminder again, we're getting a few questions about the webinar. It is being recorded, so we will have this available for you all on the website, and we'll be emailing information out afterwards to those that were able to register. One thing I want to make sure that people are aware of is that, we are here to have the conversation with you about your application and kind of talk through some of the pieces as well. So over the next week or so, Sasha and I can support you with just kind of being a sounding board for that if you need. Any other questions? The chat's open for folks. Great. Yes, no problem, of course. So we are available after this webinar if anybody needs anything. But I just want to thank you all again. We'll be on here a little bit longer just in case anybody else has any questions. But feel free to reach out. Again, this is our screen here at the end. You can shoot me an email, or my phone number too is available on the website. It's 617-933-0706. Again, my name is Carolina Prieto, and thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Okay, so it looks like some people were hearing ambient sounds.
Cool.
But I'm not sure that they called in, so because